Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one!
Oladipo!
Another one! Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finney, who fires the three, and
He hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Appreciate you so much for joining us here on this Wednesday. We've made it to the halfway point. Dustin Schutte with us as always from Outsider.com. John, the producer behind the wheels, keep us between the white lines. And most importantly, got you guys along for the ride. Appreciate you so much as always. Hope your day is going well. And we've got plenty to get to. Looking forward to Kyle Nedrip being on. Jess Settles, man, looking forward to talking to former Iowa player and BTN analyst Jess Settles. He did the most recent game at IU, and I was really surprised that he's spent a lot of time in Indiana. Apparently, Dustin, he's a big fan of the 500, but was very knowledgeable of not just the state, but everything around it, but the program as well, more than a lot of analysts seem to talk about it. Not that they don't know, but it just, I was a little surprised coming from a former Iowa player and someone who wasn't from here, but he obviously spent a lot of time here growing up.
Yeah, that was pretty cool to see him on the broadcast. He did a lot of fun, interesting things throughout the course of that game, which I wish they would do in more broadcasts, but he gave out Christmas gifts to I think just about every Big Ten team. He went through and ranked the top five high school teams in the state of Indiana of all time, which is in a state with the kind of basketball history that Indiana has is not an easy task. I think he said he talked to Don Fisher a little bit to get a few recommendations. So it was a fun broadcast. He's incredibly knowledgeable. He does a great job on Big Ten Network. I think that Big Ten Network has by far the best analysts for both football and basketball. So it'll be fun to talk to him, kind of see what he saw in that Kennesaw State Indiana game, and then maybe get some of his thoughts about the Big Ten as a whole. As we now start, we're just about a week away now from the start of really going head first into the Big Ten conference schedule.
Absolutely. Don't forget, we're brought to you by our great friends, Andy Moore Honda. Always looking more. Go to AndyMoore.com. Honda, and of course our good friends from the Wild Club and Endeavor Hospitality. Make sure you go to the Wild Club, sign up, and start earning Wild rewards today. They are an IU athletic sponsor as well as that of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, with a myriad of great restaurants in and around the Bloomington area. Plenty to stop by, including great places like BB's Market, who I have been missing. I can tell you that. Looking forward to get back to that and some great chef JD cooking, but that won't be until next week. So looking forward to that. But I'm glad I'm not freezing anymore. How about Luka Doncic, man? He's tearing it up. He's just a bad man.
That was insane. 60 points, 21 rebounds, 10 assists. I think it was first time in NBA history. I mean, that's an insane stat line. Not only did he put up those numbers, but if you saw the way that game went into overtime, he missed a free throw, got a rebound, hit a ridiculous shot with like 2 seconds left. I mean, everything about that game was like artwork. It was one of the best performances of an NBA player I can remember seeing in a long, long time. Like that was phenomenal. And the dude's like what, 23? So
he is 23. It's he broke Will Chamberlain's record for youngest.
For the youngest, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
I forget. It was by a matter of days. I can't believe that, but yeah, I mean, that's a record that has stood for a long time, man.
Yeah.
I can't remember when it was, but I'm guessing that would be the 60s. So, holy cow! With the availability, that was before the availability of the threes. You can add in for different things. So, for that record to stand that long is crazy. But yeah, nuts. And it really puts into focus how stinking young Luka Doncic is. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And when I read he was 23, I'm like, man, he seems like he's been in the league for like 6 years.
Exactly. I think the same thing.
Maybe 8 years.
Right. I feel it's the same sort of thing with me. I keep thinking when people say his age and it pops up, it's always surprising to me because he's one of those guys that it feels like, even though he's only been in the league a few years, it feels like he's been there for a decade. And what's really crazy is for him to accomplish that. I mean, we talk about LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, some of these other Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, so many great players in the NBA. I mean, it just shows how special of a player Luka Doncic is. And he gets his credit, but I still don't know that he gets enough credit for what he's able to do on the basketball court. But after last night, I think he's not just star level, he's superstar level, and it's gonna be that way for a long time.
Yep. Also, a lot to talk about in regards to football recruiting, as the commitments have been coming in, and Indiana's been hitting the portal to fill a lot of needs on the defensive side. They're still looking for a quarterback that they have to find, but they use the portal to find plug and play defenders to try to fill in that defense. Quarterback Jameer Johnson joins Indiana from the University of Texas. He appeared in 7 games, starting 1 in the last campaign. He brings a veteran workload to next year's defensive backfield, who that was what was thought to have been one of the high points last year, but it never kind of didn't completely materialize. Yeah. So he was a national recruit out of high school. So he's a big time player. Tyreek McDaniel joins the Indiana defensive backfield as well from the junior college ranks. He's supposed to play safety next year, so there's a couple of pickups there. And of course, you talk about Johnson. He's played at the Big 12. That's a great football conference. I mean, it's for how they have been hit. They're still. I want to say they're standing strong, but it's kind of hard to say that after that Wisconsin game against Oklahoma State. What did the final end up being?
24-17, Wisconsin.
That was it close? Oh, wow.
Yeah, it ended up being a little bit closer than what it maybe should have been because Wisconsin jumped out to that 24-7 lead. But I just want to say this, and we'll go back to the Indiana stuff, but it was so weird to watch Luke Fickell coach that game. I don't like that. I'm just going to say that right now. And I don't know the conversation. I don't know what was maybe Jim Leonard just wanted to call the defense. I don't know what the specifics were, but Luke Fickell said he was going to be on the sideline with the headset, just kind of standing there. He was pretty well engaged. I think he was the decision maker in that game, and it just didn't feel right to me. I mean, Jim Leonard put his heart and soul into that program as a player, as a defensive coordinator. He got snubbed from the head coaching job, and maybe that was the right decision for Wisconsin. They don't owe him anything, but the way it kind of went down, I thought that Luke should have let him have that moment. So that did not sit well with me. But again, I wasn't there. I don't know the conversation. Maybe there was a mutual understanding and mutual agreement there. It was just kind of a bizarre thing for me to see that last night. I've never seen a coach put on the headset during a bowl game in his first game. Like I've seen them on the sidelines, but never that involved.
Yeah, it continues to be a brave new world for us in so many different aspects of sports that we're just getting to the point where all you can say is you don't have to like it. You just got to get used to it.
Right, true.
Unfortunately, I can't say I disagree with you. That will be coming back. There's no connection to Luke Fickell. They did have a great connection with Leonard, so I
mean, I think it was a crazy thing just to see him on the sideline. And I think that I don't know. Again, I don't know what the situation was, but it worked out. Wisconsin got the win, and I think now I just got a text from Jeffrey the Greek that every Big Ten West team is going to finish all the Big Ten West teams except for Nebraska Northwestern are going to finish the year with a winning record, which is a pretty big accomplishment for as much grief as the league, the division catches.
It's looking like we're probably going to need to reconnect with Jim. Well, I'm here. It's weird, Dustin. I can hear his background noise, but we can't hear him. But and his camera's frozen. Those of you who are watching on YouTube. But.
Well, one of the things he was talking about was Indiana and going through the transfer portal. And John, since we do the This Week in Indiana Football podcast during the season, what's kind of your to me, this is what Indiana has to do. They have to attack the transfer portal hard because you've got to get guys who are experienced. You've got to get guys that can plug and play almost immediately. At this point, after the last 2 seasons, there's really no wait around and try to build a program. Like, you've got to go out and you've got to try to get guys now because all the momentum you gain from the 2019 and 2020 seasons, that's pretty much gone.
Yeah, it seems like the only way that Indiana is going to be able to have success, at least with Tom Allen at the helm, you're going to have, I guess, one-off years, so to speak, because you're going to get a lot of guys who are coming in. You're going to get a lot of guys going out, and that's just the nature of the way that college football is at this point when you're a program like Indiana, because you're not going to be able to retain all of the guys who end up producing a bunch of good numbers for you, because those guys, unless they transferred in, are going to be transferring out the following year. And so it seems like it's going to be a revolving door of trying to find the best fit. And it's going to make Tom Allen's job probably a lot more difficult than it already was. And I'm curious in the long run if this makes a job like Indiana less attractive than it already was, if you think this kind of form of recruiting is more difficult than it was before. I think it would be. So in my opinion, I think that would make the job more difficult. But yeah,
I agree with you. I think that's a great point that you bring up, because think about, first of all, how difficult it is to build up a program like an Indiana, a Kansas. And now all of a sudden, when you have a player like Dason McCullough, who is the best recruit you've ever had, you've got some other guys there, some highly recruited guys, and all of a sudden an Oklahoma, a Texas, Alabama can throw a bag at somebody basically and swoon them away from your program. Now recruiting gets even more difficult. So you might have the foundation, you might have the necessary recruiting tools, and you might be able to develop guys, which that's a question mark for Indiana right now, but that's beside the point. But you might be able to develop guys, and then all of a sudden, because they have a good season and because they're only making $100,000 and they could make $500,000, they're gone. So I completely agree. That's a great point that you bring up. It does. To me, it makes that job way less attractive because it's almost impossible to build almost impossible to build a program. Now, you can have year-to-year success, or you can have a good year here and then a couple years later have another good year. But it's going to be incredibly difficult for a place like Indiana, where basketball is the primary, where that's the primary sport. That's the main interest in Bloomington, for them to have that kind of success and build that program up with NIL, basically.
Right.
All right, buddy. I'm back. It's time to take a break. We've got a lot coming up today. Looking forward to talking to Cal Ned Rip as Mike Woodson was out at Broad Ripple High School in Indianapolis last night, recognizing his high school coach, Bill Smith. Jess Settles, former Iowa player and current BTN analyst, will be with us as well. Lots more to get to. Think about your top 5 all-time Indiana high school basketball teams. Jess Settles had a list when he was on one of the broadcasts last week, and it's a great topic of conversation, because I'm like, man, there are so many different teams that can go in the top 5, and it's going to be hard. It will be. I guarantee you, I can give a top 5 that will be different from somebody else's top 5, and I could argue mine, but is there who was the greatest team of all time? Man, that would be an unbelievable debate. But we've got lots more coming up. Appreciate everybody being along with us. Looking forward to lots more coming up for you. Back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Jimbo, I still don't have Jess Settles information in case you tried to send it again.
Yeah, I did that.
It's all those texts don't want to leave Florida. They don't want to come to my cold phone.
It's like, it still looks like it's just sitting there spinning.
Well, if you want, send me his email through the private chat on StreamYard if you're able to do that.
How about if I just email it to you? Or I can just email it to you.
Yeah, well, that's fine too if it lets you, if it sends.
Well, it'll send an email. That must be a tough. Blowers. I like the like Schutte. And
I know I do hear. It's not like intrusive. It's almost like ambient noise, but I definitely hear the leaf blower or whatever it is down there.
This is what the people who cut the grass down here do, and it is like 20 minutes outside my door. I'm like, what the hell?
I tell you what, the number one thing that just helped me decide I never want to live in the South like permanently is having to cut your grass year round. Holy shit!
When you say hold on, when you say the South, what does that
Where
mean?
you're probably Atlanta and further south.
I don't know. Georgia does. Who lives in? So one of the viewers lives in Georgia, in South Georgia. Who is that?
Forrest does, and
yes, I believe it's Forrest. Yes,
someone else does as well.
I'd be interested because I tell you, when I lived in Kennesaw, I mean that was not down here in Florida, yes, absolutely, but in Kennesaw was not a thing. So I'd be curious to know if south of Atlanta. I bet not.
Maybe if it's just Florida, then maybe that's going to help me in the future, unless I'm retired and can afford to pay someone to cut my grass for me.
There we go. By the way, when I traveled through Kentucky. Ooh, that's a good state, John. I might add that to my list of places to potentially
Honestly,
move.
I don't think I realized how good of a place it is to live sometimes.
I don't know. I can't say that about live, but I would be, because I went through there for 4 days. But
yeah,
big fan of Kentucky, I am.
Forrest says he has to cut his grass twice during the winter. That's not too bad. All right, here we go.
You mean the entire winter?
Strives to always provide their guests with an exceptional dining experience. With weekly specials, quick, attentive service, Southern Stone Restaurant provides delicious 5-star comfort food with a Southern charm at 2-star prices. Southern Stone Restaurant is part of Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club.
This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you on this Wednesday. Jim Coyle alongside Dustin Schutte. How's everybody doing? Hope you're having a good day. I wish these guys with these blowers would fly away. I don't know what it sounds like there, but I can tell you what it sounds like behind me. It's driving me absolutely nuts. How about that? Ross says it's going to be sun and 56 down in southern Kentucky today. My, oh my, what a change of events that is from what it was. And I'm just so grateful that all that stuff's over for everybody. It was horrible. That's like a once every 25-year cold snap. I mean, to get that cold.
Yeah, and it was like it wasn't even gradual. It was just all of a sudden it was going to be below 0 degrees for a couple days, and then it warms back up. Usually you get in those, like, it's just a cold winter or a cold couple weeks or whatever, but that was so sudden. Almost immediately, just out of nowhere, and seemed to ruin everybody's Christmas for whatever reason. But, at least we're back to the warmth and you don't have to deal with it anymore.
Absolutely. I was talking about picking out your top all-time Indiana high school basketball teams. I'm talking all-time. You don't have to go any further back than the 60s, in my opinion. From the late 60s, there was just some greatness, with the exception of Oscar Robertson. Oh my, you have to include him. But man, George McGinnis teams. My high school lost to East Chicago, Washington, who a lot of people consider that potentially the greatest team of all time. Is it Tim Stoddard, I think, or Mel Stoddard? Pitched in Major League Baseball, but Junior Bridgman, who played basketball at the NBA at Louisville. You had Pete Turgovich, who played for UCLA. And then there was 3 or 4 Division I players on Floyd Central's team. But that was and then you keep going. You've got Lyndon Jones and Jay Edwards with Marion and 3 straight titles. Damon Bailey made a great run, but he only won 1 title 3 times to the Final Four. There's a ton of them. Milan, that's great for. I don't consider Milan just because that's an event, more of an event than anything else. But there's just so many. It's hard. That's a hard list to pare down, man. Conley and Oden, those guys.
Oh yeah, yep. There's some great teams out there. Now, I probably don't have as much of knowledge as you and some of our other viewers when it comes to naming the greatest high school basketball teams. But you could just go through the names of the players who played high school basketball in the state, and you could come up with your own NBA All-Star team. There's a reason it's still, the premier sport. And, the thing I love about Kyle Nenrip and his coverage is when he covers a game, you usually see videos, and those places are packed. And I always retweet it because I need people to know how passionate fans are in the state still for high school basketball. Even after all these years, people still, if it's a big game, they're packing the arenas. I saw one the other day, from Kokomo. There was one, I think maybe Carmel or Westfield. Just I love it. I love seeing those highlights from Kyle.
Oh yeah, you know what? And I look forward to talking to Kyle a little bit about this, because there's no one that has more historical knowledge than he does. Well, I should say there's no one, but he has a ton of he hasn't lived it all, but man, he's researched it all. He has just been through a ton of these players as well. So I really I look forward to talking to him about that. It's a great topic, because that's one where I'm like, yeah, I don't think that you can determine a right or wrong answer, which makes it fun. Is there a greatest team of all time? Greatest team of all time?
There probably is. I don't know who it would be. It would be interesting to because I think what you said earlier, Jim, is right on point in that you could probably talk to 10 different people, get 10 different answers, and everybody could make an argument for one team or the other. So that would be a fascinating conversation. The thing that makes it so tricky, comparable to like NBA or college or whatever it might be, is the fact that, these games aren't televised. There's, however many 100 schools, everybody with a basketball team. So it's almost impossible to know. You can go through the state champions, obviously, but man, it's a fascinating question, because I think if you look at a specific team or maybe even an era, you could come up with so many different answers. I know that one of the teams that'll fit mine, John, was if we were doing this, my knowledge is not nearly as extravagant as everybody else's, but my team in 2002, 2003, Lewis Cass won their first state title, went undefeated that season. And so that's my number one team. But I mean, that has nothing to do with historical context or anything. It's just a little bit of bias and favoritism.
I know little to nothing about the historical teams of Indiana high school basketball. That's not
Fair
to say
enough.
I can't respect it, obviously. But so I grew up in Southern Indiana. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on either the podcast or this show. And if before my family moved to Kentucky, I was going to attend, if I would have lived where I originally lived my entire childhood, I would have gone to Jeffersonville High School.
Okay.
And their basketball gym is one of, and I know all of Indiana has large basketball gyms, but
yeah,
their gym is one of the largest, I guess, just gyms that I've ever seen. And I remember my elementary school basketball team that I did not play on. I was a manager. I wasn't very good back whenever I was in elementary school. I was a late bloomer, so to speak. But our team, the Utica Jets, got to play in the county championship. And so you got to play it at Jeffersonville High School. And so getting to play in something that really is massive or see something and it seemed like a big deal. Like it had commentators and everything. That's how big of a deal a elementary school public championship actually was, and probably still is. And I think it was broadcast on like the Jeffersonville High School TV network or whatever it was called. But the fact that they actually made some sort of a production out of a public elementary school county championship, that just goes to show what basketball really means in this state as Jim Coyle rejoins us.
You know what's crazy is the fact that even these small town gyms, I think I would have to go back and look at some research, but you talk about the biggest gyms in the country. A lot of them are in Indiana.
I believe 7 out of the top 10 are in Indiana.
I wanted to say that too.
Before.
But I think
how about 10 out of 10?
It's not, is it 10 out of 10? I guess that could have changed over the years. Let's see if I can find this information out.
Yeah.
There is one in Dallas that holds 7,500.
Wow.
So wherever that fits in, it's not. I think it's 9 out of 10 is what it actually is because
it
of the
might
one
be
in Dallas. Because of the one in Dallas.
But I think my high school gym, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but I think that our gym held more people than there was in the town, which is not uncommon. I mean, it's insane. And it's not big. I didn't attend a big school. I think maybe the gym held 3,500 or something, and the town was a 2,000 or 2,500, whatever the case. I mean, there's 2 towns, but nonetheless, it's just crazy how even the small gyms are pretty good size.
Here we go. 12 out of the top 14 largest are from Indiana. With you're right, Jim. In Dallas, number 6, Alfred J. Luce Fieldhouse is the only one of the top 10 that is not from the state of Indiana.
What's the other one?
And number 14 is the Wildcat Den in Chinle, Arizona.
So 12 out of 13 then.
Wait a minute. Is that high school or is that for?
No, this is high school. Yeah.
Okay. Want to make sure. Huh.
So if that made the list at number 14, that means 12 of the top 13 are in Indiana.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How many did you say? You said 14. 14 doesn't count.
Or excuse you. Well, this thing only goes to 14, so that's why I said 12 of the top 14. It is 13 out of 14.
So they got 12 out of the 13.
Yeah.
And so Jim was right. 9 out of 10. Nice call, Jim.
Yep. The top 5 are Bill Green Athletic Arena in Marion, Tiernan Center in Richmond, Newcastle Fieldhouse in Newcastle, John A. Barato Athletic Center in East Chicago. And do you know what number 1 is, Jim?
Yep, Seymour.
That is correct. Lloyd E. Scott Gymnasium with a capacity of
8,228. Thank you very much.
Bam.
Thank you very much. Make sure you pay your bartenders and waitresses. I'm here all week.
The winner of Indiana High School Basketball Jeopardy is Jim Coyle.
Hey, man, I spent a lot of time in those gyms when I was growing up in high school or whatever.
It's so fun.
That was a deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I played football and I loved my sport, but, dude, going to those high school games, it was a blast.
Yes.
I mean, it was an absolute blast. I don't know. I wonder if it's still like that. in high school? For those kids, I hope that it is. I know that everything changes, but it seems like that's something that's still there.
So when I was growing up and going to school, it was still very much everybody would come out to the games. I mean, every single night, good, bad, and different. It probably wasn't, packed to the brim like it used to be. And then when I was covering games and broadcasting games, it seemed like nobody would go to the games. Now, I don't know if there's been some sort of change or what, but like I said earlier, when I see Kyle's videos and some of the other guys who cover high school sports across the state will tweet out videos too, it seems like there is a resurgence in attending those high school basketball games. Because I've seen, I think it was Carmel who stormed the court, Kokomo with Flory Badunga. They had a big show out a few weeks ago. So when Kyle posts a lot of those videos, a lot of those gyms are packed to the brink, so it's still a big deal. I know that there was a dip off there in the 2010s in attendance, but I think it might be making a comeback. When I was in school, it was still a big deal to go every Friday and Saturday.
I asked, is there a number one team of all time? And if there is, I agree. It has to come out of this group. I don't know.
Yeah.
God, I don't know. I say that. God, Jay Edwards and Linda Jones. That was tough. Conley and Odin. Didn't they win back to back?
I think I don't remember, but I think it's hard to imagine anybody would have beaten those guys.
George McGinnis was one of the baddest men to ever play. First of all, then you got to go back. I don't remember the teams obviously, but Oscar Robertson played high school basketball in Indiana.
Christmas Addicts, right?
Exactly. So with him, absolutely, he's in there. I mean, can you imagine a tournament with Oscar Robertson's team, George McGinnis's team, the 69, 70, 71, those teams, those champions, Conley and Odin's teams, Jay Edwards, Lyndon Jones teams. Oh, God, would that be an incredible tournament, man?
And you know what's funny? I know we got to take a break, but real quick, what's funny to me about that stuff is at the time, you don't really know what you're watching. Like, they're good players, but you don't understand. And then to go back in time and to be able to watch it, I wish we had a time machine.
Absolutely. Well, we don't, but we got to take a break here anyway. Our good friends from Endeavor Hospitality and the Wow Club bring you GoTeen. A GoTeen is for those on the go, whether it's yourself, your student, your athlete, whomever. It's a great way to pick up a great, tasty bite for the day with full of protein. And you can pick those up at BB's Market or just go to GoTeen.com and you can find that. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Golfers, here's the deal.
It sounds like there's a construction site in your apartment or condo.
Wait a minute, so you talking about the beeping?
Yes.
That was the damn microwave. I was like, what in the fudge is that?
I was like, that's either the microwave or a really bad fire alarm. So
yeah, imagine if he's just doing the show while the building's burning down.
Either way, something is cooking.
And you
what is your
the rock is cooking, baby.
When do you return, by the way?
Well, the flights, it's been very difficult.
That is true.
Please just do your show from the airplane, especially if it's Spirit. Nobody will give a shit.
Can you imagine? Jim gets punched on a plane.
I'm heading up to the cockpit. We're going to interview the pilot.
We fly in this northwest. Oh, that would be. I mean, it would be. I would feel so bad for the passengers, but it would also be incredible. I wish there was a way.
Like trolling.
Hey,
just do one segment from the plane and troll people. Interview your seatmates.
If I had enough money, I would say, you know what, we're going to do this live from the plane, but I am going to give each of you $1,000 for having to put up with this nonsense.
That's actually not bad if you have the money. Yeah, that could be fun.
That's a lot. Why would you give them so much?
Yeah, I think they probably let you do it for 100 or 200. I bet.
Well, mate. Okay. Well, but in this scenario, I have unlimited money.
That's true.
I have like Bill Gates money or
there is no
just offer to pay for their flight.
Offer
to pay them, reimburse them for their ticket.
Oh, that's true. Bezos.
Last open segment before Kyle Neddenrip joins us.
Howdy, Kyle.
Uno minuto. But so anyway, real quick, you didn't say what time you're supposed to leave or come back or day.
You're right, I didn't.
So he doesn't know. Jim,
Sure.
from the middle of nowhere.
Parts unknown.
What are you heating up?
Make sure that microwave is off before we come back.
Not coffee, not stupid Jimmy Dean breakfast sandwich.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Friends or coworkers, Feast Market and
Eat in
Cellar
the dark.
offers
I
an
like that.
extensive wine selection with a sommelier on staff to help you with your selections. Feast also provides a wide variety of cheeses, gourmet sandwiches, entrees, a coffee bar, bread, pastries, all made fresh and mouthwatering. Stop by Feast Market and Cellar today.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It's Wednesday, Hump Day. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming at you. Brought to you by our good friends from Remax Realty. If you're in the Indianapolis area looking for a home, you need Cheryl Sizemore and her 2 decades of experience. It could be the difference between you getting the home you want or not. I can't disagree with you, James. Reach out to our good friend Cheryl Sizemore, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Cheryl's a great IU supporter and a great supporter of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, whom we appreciate greatly. Philip says he was listening to your conversation that you were breathe life back into that little ditty you were talking.
So this is the situation. Here's how I'm going to set it up, because there was at one point, Jim, I think maybe a year ago, you had mentioned to John that you might start the broadcast from the plane. I think you were flying out to Portland for the Indiana March Madness game last year.
That's when we had
so it was
Dayton at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or something. Drove straight to the Indianapolis airport to get on the flight.
So I think you did part of the show from the airport, and you sent a text to John like, I might do a segment from the airplane. And I texted John. I said, Jim's going to get smacked and escorted off the plane. So it's always been a joke with JTP and I about you doing a segment from the plane and seeing if anybody would get annoyed. So in the break, I said it would be awesome if Jim did a segment from the actual plane, and then but it would be great to do it with a lot of passengers, but offer them like $1,000 as a prize or whatever to have to put up with us doing a segment from the show from the airplane. And then Philip chimes in, if you have unlimited money, why don't you fly private? Which is a great point.
And you don't have to pay them anything, because then you're just giving them the private ride, and that's their payment.
But I want to see.
Man, I like how you think.
It's a great point, but at the same time, I want to see the utter, just the complete dissatisfaction, the annoyance on everybody's face. To me, would make it worth it.
I'm reading some comments. That's something hanging behind me. Oh my God, that's hilarious though. More of the world creature. It does. I know exactly what. I don't even have to turn around. I know exactly how he's talking about. That's funny. Yeah, I don't know. That's. I'd rather see. I didn't think about that But yeah, that would have been an impossibility. Yeah, that would not have flown. No pun intended.
Oh, you intended that. You intended that. Look, could you imagine? To me, it's annoying when people talk on their phone on an airplane. So if you're listening and you fly, don't do that because that's annoying to me. But there was a small part of me that I just wanted to see what kind of reaction and what kind of faces we would see around you if you indeed did do the show while taxiing in an airplane on the tarmac. That would have been maybe must watch.
Just taxiing?
Yeah, like not in the air, because once you get up to the air, that would have been not possible. But when you're on the ground,
why do you say that? They have internet these days, my brother.
Okay, here's my question: have you ever gotten the internet to work on a freaking airplane?
Okay.
I have paid for it before, and it still never works. It's a waste of money.
I'm not going to mention the airline, but I paid for it twice. That it wasn't even available on the damn flight.
Exactly. Yes, correct.
I'm like, why are you offering, selling, and charging me for a service that you don't even provide?
Yes. This has happened to me multiple times. It's happened to me twice. It's happened to me twice. I was trying to get work accomplished. I don't like flying by myself. So I was trying to, listen to some podcasts, get some work done when I was covering the Big Ten on the flight, paid for the internet. No freaking internet. So if you try it, don't even do it. It's a waste of money.
Traveling is something, but time of day is key, man. I came through the Indianapolis airport for a flight, not one of seven out of, I was on 7 planes in 10 days. One of those flights was like a 9:50 flight out of Indy, and I get to TSA and there was one person. I was like, are you kidding me? Is this a dream? Move over there for Howie so we can see that. That's what he was talking about.
That little creature. Oh, yeah.
It does look like, yeah, there's probably too much sun there, but yeah, you can't see that. But yeah. But, at least you don't have to wear a mask on a plane. That was rough. Those days were rough.
Yes, they were. And
I'm looking forward to that. Having to do that again. Yesterday, when Don was on, we talked, we talked about the basketball team not really seeming to find its inner. I hate to say inner demon, but it's inner dog. I guess that's the best way to say it. It's inner dog is the best way to say that. And it's not about that the team that sky is falling or that the team is horrible. That conversation was specifically it wasn't even about how well they're playing X's and O's wise. It was how they were playing in relation to what most fans think back of, when you think of Indiana basketball, and most of that was with Bob Knight, you have to admit. Yeah. But you think of toughness and hard, gritty-nosed defense. Last year, this team was best defensive team in the conference. This year, not so much. And yes, now they're getting hit with injuries, but this is kind of pre-injury. All these things that we were talking about yesterday that Don brought up, and Don has done this for 50 years. Don has been there. Don has seen it. Don has seen all of these teams. He knows he hasn't been in the wars. He hasn't fought the battles, but he has seen them all. He's seen these players. He's seen how they play. He's seen how they were pushed, how they practiced. He mentioned he's going to go to a few practices this week because that's something specifically he's looking at. I wouldn't be surprised if he brings it up on the show next week. And I mean, I think, I'll be honest with you, I think Don does a hell of a job balancing, expressing opinions, and riding a line between his employer. Because let's be, completely up front. At the end of the day, his check does not come from Indiana, but it comes from Indiana. I mean, it comes from Learfield now, but that's basically, you're basically an IU employee of sorts. So whereas someone like us, we're allowed to criticize. Well, he can. It's harder, but not that that's a desired thing. That's not what. No, if it's great, that's the conversation is going to be about how great it is. If it's not, it's going to be about that it's not, and why is it not? Asking the questions. What's going on? I had a nice Twitter conversation with someone in regards to one of the teases that go out for the show. And this is all John's fault too. I get to blame John for all that. John writes the teases, by the way. He does a great job, but he writes all the teases. So
I'm unaware. Where is this conversation going?
Well, it'll reach its. It's nothing bad. There's nothing bad to it. It's just perception. Here's the biggest thing I would tell people: don't form an opinion from a headline.
Right.
Stop. Period. End of story. Especially when it is obviously a tease to a link contained right there, meaning that there's content to which this is talking about. But just because the tease is short, it has to be short. You got so much room. Obviously, the goal is to get
to lure people in.
Well, I don't use the word
lure. That has a negative connotation.
See, John's gonna start getting hand smacks.
It doesn't have, it means the same thing as what we're trying to say. It's just
I understand that, John, but the point is to use
intrigue.
See, John, he'll get upset. He gets upset with me. He knows I'm teasing with him, but he gets upset.
Oh no, I'm not upset at what we're talking about at all. I'm curious what they're referring to.
Well, teases, like yesterday for the segment with Don, it said, can Mike Woodson get the team turned around? Well, if you just read that statement or read it as a statement, which it's not, it was part of other texts
of the whole,
all relating to a promo of the show for yesterday that is contained there together. So obviously, you know what that is for. But regardless of that, you cannot form an opinion on a headline because you think you might know what that headline is talking about, but unless you have listened, read, whatever it is that it is referring to, that's not always the case. So
here's the thing too.
And some people don't like, teases. Not, I get it, but you know what? I don't like paying taxes.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not misleading. I don't think that I'm misleading any of the viewers. At least I hope I'm not. And if I am, I would.
Sure. Somebody throw him a doggy treat. No one's saying you're misleading.
No. We're just having a conversation. We're just having a conversation.
I think you do a great job. I was just explaining to other people how.
And I just want to know. That's all. This doesn't have to be an argument. No. We're trying to engage in the conversation.
Here's the thing. If you put too much in the headline, this is what
you only have so much room. That's another thing.
You only have so much room. Number one. Number two.
That's the first thing, actually.
Number two. Look. When somebody says something about clickbait, that's when you mislead the viewer. That's when you say something is about one thing and it's about something completely different, trying to draw them in. I hate when people say clickbait because they have no idea what it actually means. That's number two.
I agree. That really, I'm like going, okay. I don't ever think clicks, or that's just not. That's not how
Right.
I get it, but that's not. It is to try to quickly inform or try to quickly tease you into say, hey, here's some content. Boom. It may seem sensational, but you have to know what it's referring to, the actual content, what we're actually talking about.
The third thing is if you give too much away in whether it's the headline, the description, you're not gonna watch it. And we get paid for viewers. You get paid for page views, for people, for advertising, that sort of thing. So it has to be enticing for people to go watch it. If I say, here's the biggest thing that Don Fisher said in a story, and it's 4 sentences, and that's the biggest part, are you going to go and watch that video? Probably not. If I tease it a little bit, are you going to go and watch that video? More likely that you're going to do that. So
we're getting way technical, man.
This is what people wanted. People wanted to join the show today to talk about clickbait.
Well, I mean, it's that usually to me goes with online. It goes on. That's usually content that from people that are not covering, that are actually not there covering, like someone who would put out a bunch of IU content on a page who is nowhere around, that has no relationship at all. They're just doing it for that reason. That's a clickbait type of situation. There are certain online avenues that are I would put that in as well. I'm not going to call them out, and I'm not talking about any of the IU media. It's other stuff that I'm talking about, but
I can't imagine who that might be.
Well, no, I don't know that you do.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'll tell you who I get clickbait from all the time, and it's not related to Indiana, is a source called The Spun or something like that. Don't ever click on anything from The Spun because it makes no sense.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There are so many places like that. That's what I'm talking about. That have no relationship, no ties to what they're actually, the content that they're putting out. They're just doing it just for that reason, just to get you to do that. We put out a content that is a specific content, and we do it every day. And yes, there's cost to that. There's cost to traveling to cover the games, to bring all the information, to doing all the stuff that we do, the equipment, yada yada. So yeah, it's got to pay for itself. So that's how that goes, man. But that's that no one knows. Everyone that listens is worked. They've all experienced it. So there's that. Enough talk about that junk. Forrest Gray says that Wilt was the best player he's ever saw, but I didn't see him play, so I cannot disagree with you, and I will not. But good thing we can't go into that conversation anyway because it's time to take a break. But up next, Kyle Nedrip from Indian Star is going to join us, and we will work in to the conversation. We'll kind of go back a little bit to some of the best. I'd love to hear his best, 5 best, if he can. Not that he can't come up with it, but he would probably rather put a little thought into putting that final 5 out there. But we'll ask him anyway. Brought to you by our good friends from Barbara Pop Real Estate Services down in Southern Indiana, Louisville, Floyd, Clark, Harrison, Scott counties down there. They have served those communities for over 3 decades. Reach out to Barbara at barbarapop.com, or our friend Matt Lincoln, Matt at barbarapop.com. We're back with more Indiana Sports Feed Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Andy Moore Honda.
Excuse me. I can't. Jim, did you mean to remove yourself? If you did, I'm not going to put you back in. Okay. Jim removed himself while he was snacking on his brekkie sandwich.
Brekkie?
Well, I didn't want to.
Oh, no, it's okay. You didn't want to do some ASMR mukbang.
Exactly.
Did something spur that conversation on? Because if it did, I missed it.
I know. I was confused too. I was like, why are they talking about the clickbait?
I brought that up. Right,
but I'm asking if did somebody say something about it being clickbaity?
As I said, there was a response on Twitter. Just a good Twitter conversation
yesterday. I'm curious where it is because I missed it.
Interesting.
I understand people thinking things are clickbait, but I promise I don't.
No.
Ever put anything that's clickbaity. What did I say? IUBB has some time off before returning to conference play at the beginning of January. Don Fisher joins us to talk about where this team currently stands at this point in the season. Was that what they were worried about?
No. There was another one that you said, can Mike Woodson get this team turned around?
That must have been that might have been Chronics. Yeah, it was with Chronic Hoosier. Anthony Leal recently made the most of his NIL dollars by providing for a family member. Chronic Hoosier joins us to talk about why moments like this are why NIL is such a great thing.
And that should have been can be a great thing, by the way.
What did I say? Okay, yeah, you're right. Actually, this is just a great action of a brother to a sister. Complete. Let's see. Oh, you're talking about. I see which comment you're talking about. He or she didn't say whether or not it was clickbait. They just.
I don't know if you're talking about the same one.
No, because I'm looking at your response to it.
Because it's not what you were just reading.
No, that was the different one. This one says turn it around. They're ranked 16th, and then you said something to him.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Order online today at thefreshfork.com. Fresh Fork is a proud partner of WOW Network. This segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Wednesday, December 28. Almost through with 2022, man. 2023. Think about that. Does that not sound like some space age movie you saw as a kid?
Yes.
I'm not kidding. Think about that. Just put those numbers up on a big old screen. 2023. I look at that and I was like, oh my God, wow, you're looking into the future. It's the here and the now. Oh my God, what is it?
What was that movie, 2000, A Space Odyssey or something like that?
Yeah, that was 23 years ago, man.
I know.
That's over 2 decades ago. Party like it's 1999, over 2 decades ago. Crazy.
It's crazy. It is crazy. Yes.
That rock doesn't stop spinning, baby. That rock does not stop spinning. Howie says that he thinks that the basketball program has basketball IQ issues.
I don't know that that's true.
There's some growth.
Yes.
That means you got a couple of freshmen who are still growing. Malik Renew, who I think that they're going to need more out of Malik Renew because they're not getting it out of Race Thompson right now.
Right.
And I don't know if that changes. I don't know if that's been – I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that I know. I'm not in practices. I'm not a coach. I did not play D1 basketball, so and I don't pretend that I did. I just take the information that I get. I ask questions, and I try to take that information in, and just use common sense. But man, it just seems like They're spinning right now.
Well, what I would say is I understand that comment. I understand why it looks like there's a low basketball IQ, but what I would respond with is I don't know what the offense is trying to accomplish. I've said this multiple times now. I don't know when they don't have Trace Jackson Davis or when Trace Jackson Davis is double teamed, they look lost. And so to me, that reflects coaching. It's not like they're making bad it's just a lot of standing around. And to me, that reflects the coaching, the scheme, whatever you're trying to accomplish. I don't know what it is. So when I don't know what the goal of the offense is, it's hard for me to say they don't have a good basketball IQ. But the bigger issue is exactly what Don talked about yesterday, in the fact that this team, you can always control your effort and your toughness. And I don't want to hear the injuries have undoubtedly played a factor in some of these losses. They hit them hard against Rutgers, hit them against Arizona, Kansas, and all of those games, that has an effect. But in 2 of those 3 games, Indiana at some point in the game didn't look like they wanted to be there. In the opening few minutes against Arizona, that was abysmal. Throughout most of that game against Kansas, they just rolled over. The game against Rutgers, they just rolled over. We talked about it. And that's why I said yesterday, if you had an Indiana team that finished 20-10, is that and made it to the first round of the NCAA tournament, is that good enough in Indiana? No. People are going to be pissed. I get it. This is a proud program. They want Final Fours. They want Big Ten championships. At the same time, if that team is diving on the floor, if they're giving defensive effort, if they're fighting teams each and every game and you never feel like they give up and they just make mistakes or they're just not hitting shots, you can live with that. It's a much more fun team to watch. When this team gets killed on the glass or gets eaten alive inside the paint, that's not fun to watch. And that's where I think a lot of the frustration sets in. And that's what Don was talking about. It is infinitely more fun to cover a team that's competitive, that works hard. And I'm not saying this team doesn't try hard. I just don't see that toughness. When they get punched in the mouth, they just kind of back away and go, whoa. They shake the cobwebs and they go back and they get hit again. They don't deliver a counter punch.
Robert thinks that Indiana will be all right and that they will win the Big Ten. Is that not good? It would be, but I disagree with you, Robert. I do not see this team that I have seen play for most of this season. I mean, their best win is Xavier. They caught North Carolina at a great time. They were really falling back, lost 4 straight. They were really lost at that point. And since then, they got punked. They got punked at Rutgers. I'm not going to say they got punked by Arizona. Arizona is a really good team, but
right.
They sure didn't. They backed down. How about that? They backed down. They fought back at Kansas, which was that took Mox. But they still did. They're just not showing that. It's like you can tell.
Well, it's
like they quit before it's over, and he's like, man, you cannot ever do that. Look at the Minnesota Vikings. They were down 33-0. They completed the greatest comeback in the history of the NFL. You know why? Because they didn't quit. Dan Dawkins put out a tweet yesterday, and everybody's going to say, "Oh, I don't care." People, you don't have to like him, dislike him, but a lot of the things he says are true. This was about the Colts. He was retweeting a CBS Sports tweet that showed the Colts have been outscored in the 4th quarter under Jeff Saturday 90-10. And Dan just put, that equals quit.
Yeah.
It does equal quit. That's exactly what that equals. You're getting your tail kicked in the 4th. But my point is, you can't quit. Minnesota didn't quit. I mean, who in their right mind would have thought Minnesota would have come back from that game and completed the greatest comeback in the history of the NFL? 33 points.
Right.
Not very few people, but I can tell you who did think that. The guys on that Minnesota Vikings team.
Yeah.
because they didn't quit. They played to the end. And man, I mean, it's remarkable. But so
and look to me, it's not even necessarily the games that they lost. I think there are some concerning things that you saw. The Arizona game, I give Indiana a ton of credit because they could have rolled over that game, and they did fight back. They got it within a couple points multiple times in that game. They didn't back away. They just didn't get off to a good start. So I give them credit for that. The Rutgers and Kansas game were a little bit different in my eyes. But you look at, and I missed the Elon game. Don said he didn't like the way the team was warming up, for that Elon game. I did watch the Kennesaw State game. And again, that just comes down to toughness. And I get that you don't have Trace Jackson Davis, which is probably helps you out by at least 15 points in that sort of game. And then you don't have Xavier Johnson, and we talked about all offseason, as Xavier Johnson goes, we think Indiana goes. So that's a huge blow. But again, at times in that game, I just didn't see the same sort of toughness that you used to see from Indiana, no matter who they were playing. It didn't matter if they were playing top-ranked Duke or Southeast Missouri State, who was, last in the league. It just didn't matter. They came out with the same fight toughness, and you don't see that on a game-to-game basis. And I think that again is where the frustration comes in. And over the course of a 30-game season, there's going to be some nights you just don't have it. That's just how it's going to go, especially when you're dealing with 18 to 23-year-olds. That's just how it's going to go. So I get it. But problem
that has to be the exception.
Exactly. Yes.
Never the rule.
Correct.
Never the rule. The exception.
Right. Exactly.
And the problem is they've already had multiple examples.
Yes. I would say at least 3.
Absolutely. And it's early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
Because you ask yourself, who have they beaten? Okay, they beat Xavier and they beat North Carolina.
Yep.
Am I missing any?
Nope.
And not winning some of these other games, again, not the issue. It's the eye test. It's a simple eye test. You can see it. So,
and here's to add to
it's while it's late December, it's December. So it's the beginning of January, but you can't people keep saying, well, you can't judge a team in December. I get that. Guess what though? You're about to turn the calendar, and not only are you turning the calendar, go into conference play. You go into conference play on the road. And Mike Whitson has to be pounding into their heads that they've got to play tougher. They've got to be tougher. I don't know that he is or isn't. I'm not saying either way because I'm not there. I don't know. I'm just saying I know. I would guess that has to be something that is going on. If not, I would really wonder why it's not going on. There was a suggestion of people asking, having players come back and talk, which that happens time to time, but having a bunch of them. I'm like, you know what? You shouldn't have to do that. But how many kids are on this team that are from Indiana?
Right.
That does.
It does make a difference.
When you want to talk about culture, it's hard to have culture when you continue to bring outside pieces into what is supposed to be an inner culture.
Correct.
And
this is what I've had problems with when people say that Indiana's recruiting hasn't been there. That to me has not been the case. Indiana's recruiting has been fine. It's been the development and then the understanding. They brought in some guys. Look,
we can agree and disagree on the recruiting. It's been good. I'm not saying it hasn't been good, but it has not been great. I mean, yes, they landed is an operative word, but I'll leave it at that.
So this is where I'm going to get to. Who had the better recruiting class, Indiana or Purdue? Based on stars. Tell me who had the better recruiting class.
Oh, if you want to go on stars, probably Indiana.
Yeah, and so
but stars don't mean jack on the court, man.
This is what I'm talking about. Everybody wants to look at the star rating. They want to look at how the recruiting rankings. They're nice and pretty. It's a 4-star guy. It's a 5-star guy. We got to get this guy. Got to get that guy. He's one of the best.
How many stars?
Purdue
has 2 starting freshman guard.
That's my point.
That have been 5 times freshman players of the week in the Big Ten.
Yes.
Ohio State has a guy named Bryce Sensabaugh. He's been freshman of the week at least 3 times, maybe 4, but 3 and back to back.
Yep. This is that you've got to recruit the right players. This is what Philip says. Indiana is recruiting good players, not the right players. Bingo. You've got to get the right players. And if that means you take a guy who doesn't have a star next to his name because he understands what it means to play at Indiana and to win some of these big games and to win Big Ten championships, then so be it. Don't get caught up. And this is, I think, the problem that we've seen from some of these previous coaches. You get caught up in the stars and what everybody else is telling you about a player. You don't go through the evaluation yourself. And that's not to say Indiana does have good players. They do have talent, but you have to have those guys that understand what it means to play at Indiana. They have to understand what it means to play in these rivalry games. And I have not seen it in a very long time.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll talk more about that. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Looking forward to talking to Jess Settles today on the program. He's up next, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. Looking forward to that, man. Jess Settles, BTN analyst, former Iowa player, going to join us next year on the program. Brought to you by Metalworks Brewing Company, part of the Endeavor Wow Hospitality Group. Make sure you stop by any of the great Endeavor Hospitality restaurants and get a serving of Metalworks Brewing, or you can go right to the source, Metalworks Brewery, located right off the square in Bloomington, right off 6th Street. They enjoyed their craft of metalworking and great beers side by side. Stop in. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home,
Michelle says Purdue is squeaked by Nebraska and Davidson playing very poorly in both. Agree, but you know what they did?
They won.
Bingo. And we're not talking about this if Indiana plays poorly and squeaks by Rutgers.
We're not talking about it if they get beat by a last possession.
If they're competitive against Kansas.
I was going to say if they yeah. That's the thing. It's not that people keep saying, they're ranked 16th. Do you know why they're ranked 16th? I asked this question to someone yesterday. Do you think that they're the 16th best team in the country? Do you think they're playing like the 16th best team in the country? I don't know. I haven't seen them play like a top 25 team in the last 2 to 3 weeks. Personally, that's just my opinion. But
because there's so many other teams losing that they still have.
They're living on the preseason hype still.
Right. And I don't think there's an elite team in college basketball this year.
I agree with that. It's dirty, and that's why they had the chance. It's not like that they're far off. The injuries have been the injuries are a problem. I mean,
it is.
Xavier Johnson's that's a loss, man. That's a kick. That's a tough loss for that team.
Right.
He's elite. He's the best leader they have.
I mean, they've taken some blows. It's look, the reason that I'm trying to smooth some things over here, that I'm personally being very hard on Indiana is because we talked about this is supposed to be the best team in the Big Ten. I heard all offseason this is supposed to be the best team in the Big Ten. I understand that we're in December and a lot can change. North Carolina made it to the championship game last year.
We're basically not in December anymore because their next game is January 5th.
Right. So we're in January. So I understand there's a lot of basketball to be played. This team can still make a run. They have the talent. But I have not seen the toughness and identity of a team that wants to win a Big Ten title through these 13 games. I haven't. That doesn't mean it can't change, but that's what's frustrating.
I think people are losing sight. Well,
30 seconds, guys.
Hey, Jess.
Jess Settles.
What's up, fellas?
How are you doing, man? Appreciate you so much.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me on. How's it going?
Appreciate you, man.
Good. All right, here we go, guys.
and custom metal art. Check out their custom growlers. Metalworks Brewing Company has an updated menu, new brews, and will be offered in all Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. Come taste what Dr. Hops is brewing. Metalworks Brewing Company. Bring your passion and your thirst.
This segment is brought to you by Courtroom Sports Grill in Bedford. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you here on this Wednesday between Christmas and New Year's. Hope you're having a good day. Joined now by Jess Settles, former Iowa Hawkeye, current BTN analyst, and one of the most knowledgeable analysts out there on places where he didn't play. I mean, and he's rocking the John Deere hat on top of that. So, boom, he wins. He wins for the day. How's it going, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. I appreciate the shout out on the John Deere hat. My dad and I, we farm in Southeast Iowa, so we farm corn and soybeans. That's all we drive are John Deere. So the BTN stuff is just a side hustle in the winter, and it works out with the schedule. But that's what we do. But hey, man, it was great to be in Indiana the other day. I love it. Hoosier basketball. I always get excited when I get an opportunity to call a game there and just be in Assembly Hall. There's just nothing like it, as you guys know.
Man, the fact that you're an actual farmer, I did not know that. A, yeah. B, that's incredible. That's awesome that you get to do it with your dad. Right. Even it just continues to go on and on. But that's not an easy gig, brother. That's the getting up early kind of jobs.
Man, it's just great to be outside. I'm farming with my dad, my uncle Gary. It's wonderful. The ag community, as you guys know, is just a unique group of people. I always tell people that the toughest part about farming is marketing your grain. It's like, you grow it and you harvest it, and it's just a blast, and your kids are involved, and your mom and your wife and your kids bring dinner out to the tractor or the combine. It's just the greatest feeling in the world. But at the end of the day, it's just timing the markets of selling your grain is really tough. And as a lot of your listeners know who grew up in agriculture, you grow up with it at the table. You don't get a regular salary and things like that. So it's a different life, but it's been a good run. It's fun, and it's a good fraternity to be a part of.
And one thing, Jess, I wanted to talk to you about. I know farming's a tough job, but I thought you got hit with one of the toughest jobs I've seen on live television, having to rank the best high school basketball teams in Indiana, man. What kind of challenge was that for you? Because we were talking earlier, we could have 10 different conversations with 10 different people and probably get, 10 different teams. So how did you go about making that list? And I was impressed with your knowledge there.
Hey, I've never had more Twitter response in my life, right? and I was expecting a lot because it's Indiana, and if you know Indiana, what's the saying? Like in 49 other states, it's just basketball, right? If I grew up going to the Indianapolis 500, my uncle Larry Hentz and Ann Hentz lived in Indy, and so we went out there every Memorial Day weekend. I'm gonna guess. I probably went 10 times when I was a kid in those impressionable years. And my Uncle Larry was a big Indiana fan, even though he grew up in Iowa. That was the glory days. That was 80s, 1980s with the Isaiah Thomas, then in through Steve Alford. Then I played, obviously, in the early 90s against Alan Henderson and David Bailey. So my uncle was always filling me in with these Hoosier stories. And I followed Indiana high school basketball through Basketball Times, through Street and Smith. And he would make comments. My aunt and uncle would make comments like, yeah, there were 25,000 people at Damon Bailey's sectional the other night or something. I said, 25,000? Like in Iowa, there are maybe 2,500 at the biggest game of the year, right? So as I really fell in love with the Hoosier hysteria, then I was trying to think of this the other day. He took me to one of the state championship games. I'm going to guess it was 92. Chad Austin. I'm pretty sure that was the game I was at for the afternoon semifinal. And if I remember right, they played 2 games in the same day, right? They played the semis during the single class at the Hoosier Dome. So once you go to one of those, and I could talk to you guys about that forever, but once you go to one of this is not normal. This Steve Alford in Newcastle, right? We were talking about it on the air the other night. Bart Fox was the producer. He's a 1990, I believe, Indiana grad from the School of Journalism. So he produced the game. So that's why we got to rolling with this. And I think Steve Alford they sold more tickets to his high school games than the Pacers did that year, back when the Pacers weren't any good. So yeah, Coach Woods and I talked about this the last 2 games, and he's just huge on Christmas because of Oscar, and his mom graduated from that high school. But then Indianapolis Wash was it McGinnis and Dowling, right? He just didn't think it. I think McGinnis averaged 37 points a game over his last 4 games in the Indiana State Championships. And then what do you do with Oden and Conley, right? Like, not a single class, but what do you number 1 pick in the draft and an NBA All-Star? And obviously, if Oden doesn't get hurt, and then the region, right? The guys up at the region think they got the best team ever. And Don Fisher, that's the first team he mentioned as well. And then he knew every person in their lineup, including the guys coming off the bench the other night when I talked to him about it. So anyway, that's how it got rolling. It was just a blast to talk about it.
East Chicago, Washington beat my high school in the Final Four.
Say that again.
My high school lost to East Chicago, Washington in the Final Four. There were probably 10 NCAA Division I players in that game.
Yeah, that's crazy. They had Stoddard, right? And then they had was it
Junior Bridgman? Junior Bridgman went to Louisville and played in the NBA. Of course, Pete Turgovich played for UCLA, amongst others. I can't remember the other ones. So, but yeah, just great. I said earlier, I'd love to see a tournament between Oscar Robertson's team, the 69, 70, 71 champs, the Oden and Conley teams, the Jay Edwards, Lyndon Jones teams.
Oh, Marion.
I'm like, oh God, can you imagine a tournament with those teams? It just, I was fortunate enough to be at the Hoosier Dome when Damon Bailey won his state championship. Which that was a pretty amazing event, with 41,000 people there. But I missed the Hoosier Dome. That was a cool place to be.
Let me ask you this: from an outsider's perspective, I can't believe they gave up the single class, right? I understand the politics of it. I understand the parts. I get that, but from an outsider, I kind of stopped paying attention once that stopped. What's it like on the ground there? And was that a good decision looking back, or has that just been give me a do-over?
For me personally, no. But I'm not. I went to Floyd Central High School, which was a bigger high school. I understand if you're at a small high school, but you know what? If you work for a small company, and big companies are going to beat you. So that's life. But I think it depends on who you talk to. I would rather seen it stay single class basketball. I think a lot of people think that, but there's a lot of people that think the other way probably.
I think for me, I grew up in a small farming community in Indiana, in northern Indiana, and went to a small school. It was like 110 were in my graduating class, right? And so when I was young, we had the single class system, and it was actually teams in your community. We were one of the smaller teams in our sectional, and I can tell you that we won a sectional one year and beat our big rival, which was one of the biggest schools in the area. And there was more gratification in that than when we won a state title through the class system. I mean, it's just it to me, it took away some of those rivalries, because you play the big city team in the regular season, and then you get another shot at them in the tournament. And there was nothing greater than having those opportunities and playing that Cinderella role. Maybe it wasn't the same for guys who attended those 4A, 5A, 6A schools, but for me, in attending the smaller schools, I thought it was always more fun. Were you going to win very often? No, but when you did, I mean, it was like winning the Rose Bowl, man. It was just an awesome feeling to have those. So I wish it was still single A, but I understand why they did go to the class system.
The one thing that I don't think anyone anticipated back when they made those decisions was the emergence of the 3-point line and the analytics of that line. And I do think with the elite shooters in the state of Indiana, there would have been several small schools over the last 20 years make it to the Final Four and to the championship game, because even if you take somebody like the big dog or Alan Henderson, and as dominant as those guys were in the 90s, or even Odin Conley, you take 3 elite shooters from a small rural Indiana town, they'll shoot them out of those games in a one and done. Right. And that was not anticipated, that teams would come out and shoot 35 to 43s. That probably would have leveled the playing field. Obviously, you're going to always have the advantage if you have the 5-star guys, and the bigger city schools do. But that was such a unique, rare deal in the country, that when you give those things up and become ordinary, from an outsider's perspective, it just loses its luster.
And let me weigh in one more thing on this too, because I remember growing up when we did have the single class system, and it was Logan Sport, so a 4A school. They played a school called Pioneer, which was a 1A, one of the smallest in the state. And one of the things that was always interesting when you got to the tournament was you would see different styles, different schemes, different mindsets, right? And I remember the Pioneer held the ball so much in that game. The final score was Logan Sport ended up beating them, but it was like 16-14. Yeah. So it was doing it's not the best basketball. It's not the most enjoyable to spend $5 on a ticket for, right? But the scouting, just the things that went into it to try to win a basketball game. And I don't think, maybe you still see it a little bit with this class system, but it was just so fun, because you would see coaches pulling out the hair, doing anything possible. If that meant holding the ball for 28 minutes in a 32-minute game, by God, they were going to do it. And that's, I think, what made it so fun too.
Wow.
You mentioned playing in the early 90s, Jess. You were at Iowa Mr. Basketball in 93. Looking at some of the offers, Michigan State, Iowa State, Florida State, Notre Dame, all the time you spent in Indiana, was there ever what was the recruiting talk there? Any interest there? Because I know there's Brody Boyd, who went from here to Iowa. I think that was in the early 2000s. Maybe I forget when that was. But anyway, was there any recruiting interest between you and Indiana at that time?
You know what? When I was at the Nike camp, and I'm going to say 1992, I briefly talked to Ron Felling. Just briefly, you weren't supposed to talk more than 30 seconds or whatever the rules were. But Ron Felling liked me. Dan Dockich really liked me. And has made that clear, and Dan's even thrown some tweets out about that. But it was going to be hard to get me out of the state of Iowa, and it was going to be really hard. I grew up, our farms here are 35 miles from the University of Iowa. That's where we grew up going, and family members have played there over the years. So as another Big Ten school, you get 2 or 3 scholarships. You have to say, hey, are these guys really serious or not? I've always told people I would have. I had this conversation with Dane Fife a few years ago. I think I would have had a really, really hard time playing for Coach Knight that first year. It would have been tough for me to be away from home. It took me a year to adjust, even being as close to my folks' house as I was that first year. I feel like after that, it would have been no problem. I could have been a warrior for those guys. I would have fit in well. And Dane said I would have fit in well there. But I think realistically, from the beginning, Michigan State, Indiana, I visited Notre Dame, those places, I wanted to go to Iowa. And you have to make a business decision if there are those schools. Do you really want to put 2 years into a kid you're probably not going to get?
It's smart, because you knew you also were going to spend the rest of your life most likely, and so
right.
that usually pays much better dividends if you're attending home state U as opposed to one that especially was doing what Indiana was doing at the time. Ironically, you mentioned some of the guys you did, and one of the conversations we've had over the last 2 days, and some of the IU fans are not liking us right now, but we've been talking about the lack of toughness for this team, not a lack of ability, not a lack of some other things, but they're not showing the toughness. I think about those teams, those IU teams back then, and that's why Dane said that you would have fit in well with those teams that he played on. And at the end of the 90s, those guys were tough. I mean, they were always tough and scrapping for everything, and I'm not seeing that. Don was on with us yesterday, Don Fisher. He talked about that extensively. They just not seeing a toughness in his team, and more importantly, what they call what Indiana basketball has always been, that style of play. And I know Indiana basketball hasn't been Indiana for a long time, but that does not mean you have to lose the culture. And part of it, I wonder, is they don't have very many guys on this team that's from Indiana.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's fair to probably define toughness differently now than the 90s, and a lot of that has to do with the rules. I mean, the dumbest rule I've seen in my years of being the Big Ten Network is the hook and hold, right? So Isaac Haas at Purdue, I think, is the only player in the history of our game to ever be injured by a hook and hold. So let's make a completely different rule, and we're going to go over to the monitor for 10 minutes. There's no the cylinder rule right now. When I played at the University of Iowa, if you guys remember, we pressed the whole game. We go full court 75% of the game, 3/4 20% of the game. With that first inbounds pass, we would trap, and I was kneeing and thighing guys the whole time and grabbing and clawing, doing everything. You can't even do that anymore. And those type of plays would get you, make you more intense and get you fired up. More volleys, more rallies up and down, not as many whistles. Everybody in the Big Ten back then, seemed like Purdue had more of them. Everybody had an enforcer, and it was just, that's what they did. Were they trying to injure anybody? No, not at all. It was just very physical, hard screens over the back, use their 4 or 5 fouls in their 15 minutes and just do that. So I think the kids today, in a lot of ways, have been restricted from being as tough as they once were. I think Race Thompson, if he played on our teams in the 90s or Bob Knight's teams, I think he would be as tough as it gets. But you move a couple inches on a high ball screen 30 feet from the basket, and you pick up 2 moving screens in the first 2 minutes of the game. I don't know. I'm not making excuses for this generation, but it's just the rules are different. Everybody's terrified of getting an F1 or an F2 and having to sit out and being thrown out of the game, being considered a dirty player, all those things. I do think there is something to be said about recruiting Indiana players who grow up knowing what it means to wear that uniform. And then also Bob Knight he just demanded every ounce of your energy. He demanded everything you had, and if you couldn't bring it, then you'd had to go somewhere else. And it just created a toughness that, a kid like Brian Evans, right? Brian Evans had a wonderful NBA career. He was tough as nails to play against. He was just tough, and he just laid it all out there. Fife was unbelievably tough. I think Thomas Bryant a few years ago was as tough as they got. But you really, it's hard to win if you don't have guys who are extremely physical. Does this team have that? I'm not sure. I'm not sure they do. You guys might be onto something.
Dustin?
I was gonna ask Jess. This is an Indiana team that has played a tough schedule. Obviously, they've dealt with the injury bug quite a bit this season. So we don't want to. Basically, what we've seen through the first 13 games, and we don't want to jump to conclusions. Obviously, last year with North Carolina, they didn't play well in the non-conference schedule. They get to the national championship game, right? So anything's possible. What did you see in that Kennesaw State game? What have you seen from Indiana so far through the first 13 games that has stood out to you? Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, I think one of the things is that this team does have the talent. They were a preseason favorite to win the Big Ten for a reason. Do you think they still fit into that category right now?
I would say no right now because of X's injury. He was obviously a huge part of that. I don't see them necessarily overcoming that over the next 3 or 4 weeks when he's not there to put themselves in a position in the second half to get it done. I like Indiana's team. They have a good team. They need to get a lot better to become a great team. I think if you look back at the Rutgers game, the Arizona game, and the Kansas game, obviously you're not where you have to be and not even close. So before I called the game the other night, I had 4 or 5 days off, and I just poured in like I did when I was a coach. I coached at a small university in Iowa called Iowa Wesleyan University. And so I just poured in as if I was a coach, as if I was scouting those guys. And I watched all those games and charted some of those games. And what I saw, and I briefly talked about it on the air the other night, it appears to me that they're guarding themselves, meaning they're basically running a 3-out, 2-in, and they're running it with Race and TJD and Renew. And the guys who are, if Trace gets the ball, who's ever guarding the 4-man just doesn't guard him. They just plant right in the middle of the lane, and they plug the whole thing up. Race does not have the game and won't this year to face up and hit mid-range jumpers. He's not going to hit 3-point shots. So he's basically going up against 2 or 3 guys. So they're daring Renew and Race to beat him. And against Arizona, Race, I believe, had 4 threes. But other than that game, he's been, let's say, 3 or 4 for 28 from beyond the arc. And so the teams are going to play that way and make him prove that they can that he can hit that shot. Renew plays like a freshman. He's a good freshman, but he plays like a freshman. And the turnovers that he had in those big games, I'm not talking about Elon and Kennesaw State. I'm talking about the games that you have to win if you're going to win the league in the Big Ten. He's not ready for prime time right now to carry those type of minutes and make those plays against those teams. What freshman is, right? So the question is, over these 13 days off, the way I see it, and they did this in the second half quite a bit, and maybe the TJD injury was a blessing in disguise because they can see how this worked. You go 5 out, you go 4 out, 1 in, and you start TJD and you have Race come off the bench backing him up, and you just sub those guys for each other most of the game. Go with your smaller lineup, your shooters. Bates can shoot it, Miller Kopp can shoot it, Hood Schifino can shoot it. When you get X back, obviously he can get to the lane on anybody if he has the space. And you get that space opened up so the guys can drive. You go pick and pop with Race. You go pick and roll with TJD or isolation plays, and you kind of change the way you're thinking offensively because they're just going to load the box and have a guy in the hole the whole time. And the other thing, as I'm rambling on here, just from what I watched, I don't see that they're gaining an advantage right now with that size in the big games. They're getting killed on the glass. They are getting, destroyed in those big games on the glass. Teams come, and I think it's a quickness issue. It's not necessarily just that they're not trying, but when Race is guarding a small forward that he has to chase all over the court and get a hand up, then when that shot goes up, that guy's just flying around. Those guys from Rutgers just went right around those guys. And I think had maybe 14 offensive rebounds in the first half. So that's a tough decision, but I think they had a pretty good sample of in the second half against Kennesaw State where they kept Race out of the paint, just kept him up top for pick and pops, pick and pass, rolled him once in a while. And then Hood Schifino, he's a big guard. He turns the corner, and there aren't 2 other bigs loading the box because they have to be out guarding Trace and especially Race on the perimeter. And to me, that's the formula. If they do that, I think they have a chance to have a really good year. If they don't, I think it's going to be a struggle.
You mentioned Jalen Hood-Schifino, a freshman guard who is now going to have to carry a lot more of the load with that injury to Xavier. If X is able to come back at the end of the year, nothing about that. You just had surgery, so you just got to plan that this is how it's going to be until it's not that way. But Jalen Hood he's had some ebbs and flows, but he's played pretty well for a freshman. But now he's going to have to step it up and play even better, I'd say, with taking all that load on and maneuvering this offense that you talk about to where it is a faster offense that creates more issues for the defense because that's what they haven't been doing. They've created no problems for defenses because they're playing right into their hands, basically. And you talked about some of the things that they can do and that they I think a lot of people would like them to see them do. Trey Jackson-Davis, his unwillingness to shoot the ball from 10, 12 feet, I think is really also helping bog that middle up as well. I cannot understand nothing to make me understand why he doesn't have the confidence to shoot from 8 feet. I mean, you shoot a free throw, shoot an 8-footer, shoot an elbow jumper. I mean, I don't care. Shoot 4 in a row. Miss 4 in a row, but take them, make them try to respect that. But is there an impact there, do you think?
I think it's I think you are who you are at this point in your career, right? I mean, I'm sure Fish has talked about this many times, and you're not. I just don't see him coming out in the second half being taking mid-range jumpers, which is okay. You know, I wish he did have that part of his game. Then he truly would be a first-team All-American level dominant player, because I mean, you gotta respect him going to the rim, and teams are so worried about him, and they load up and they send two guys. If you just turn around and hit that little Calvert Chaney baseline face up, right, you'd just be unstoppable. But I still think he's an elite guy rolling to the basket, and he does set pretty good screens. And Hood Schifino, from sitting courtside the other night, man, he's impressive when he turns the corner. If he can turn the corner and then have shooters around him, and where he can bully his way to the basket, have that lane opened up, hit shooters, I think that would be. I think that's just the way they've got to do it. I think if Race and TJD and Renew are on the court together, it's just like playing against the zone the whole night. And one thing as a coach, I mean, Trace has the right coach. I mean, Coach Woodson, I mean, there's no better guy for him to be around, just from the neck up and mid-range jumpers and all the way that he used to play. It's always fascinating when you're a coach. I think when you're a former good player, or you've had success as a player, the mistake you make when you go into coaching is you think you can make guys become something that they don't want to be. And maybe a Bo Ryan and maybe a Bob Knight are outliers. Maybe they can, but most of us, you try it, you pour into it, and then you finally just accept, hey, this guy can't do this. He's not going to do this. Let's work on his strength and focus on what he can do to help us win. And that's probably where they're at right now with those personnel decisions.
Jess, I wanted to ask, we're just a few days away from really diving headfirst into the bulk of the Big Ten season, the really fun time of the college basketball schedule. Which teams have stood out to you? Which team do you think in the Big Ten is best to make a push for the Big Ten title, and then maybe have a shot at the Final Four this year?
Well, it looks to me right now that Purdue is just, literally and figuratively head and shoulders above everybody else. Edey is a problem. He has gotten so much better. And he has a ton of game right now. They've been really tested. It was funny the other night when we were talking about the high school games during the broadcast. There's just so many Purdue fans jump in there as well. I think the Purdue volleyball coach tweeted out something about a couple of the teams. And I even think the Butler tennis coach jumped in on the conversation. So look, the Purdue people, but they don't want to be left out of this Hoosier hysteria, right? At the high school level, they're all part of this. But Purdue, just the way they move the ball, the schedule that they played, they look really good. After that, I mean, I think there's 4 or 5 teams in there that are about the same. Michigan's shown to be pretty tough. Michigan State up and down, but they're going to get better. Maybe Wisconsin is the second best team in the league, which is hard to believe. But Wall is one of those guys, and he's a lot like TJD, where he doesn't rely on a jump shot, but he's just filthy around the rim. He's just all kinds of moves. They don't turn the ball over, right? It's the same formula. They don't foul. They make their open shots. They don't beat themselves. But it's going to be wide open, especially if Edey gets in foul trouble or picks up some injuries, gets banged up as the year goes on.
What's your next game that you got to call, Jess?
I believe I have Rutgers, Nebraska, or Rutgers, Penn State next week. So out at Piscataway, go out there. Yeah, I forgot about Rutgers, right? They're pretty tough too at home.
Yeah, they'll look forward to that. Make sure you catch Jess, because he's was already one of my favorites, but now with the farmer, he's a farmer. He's over the top, baby. He's number one. He's number one in our book. I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed this conversation. I had a blast. I'd love for you to come back with us as the season goes along. I had crazy quick thing. I was fortunate to have dinner with an older gentleman the other day who played for Wake Forest in '62. It's Bob Knight in the Final Four. And I was just blown away. I just happened to meet him, and it was just crazy how small this world is in the basketball world. But appreciate you so much, and you're such a great ambassador for the game, man. Do a great job on those broadcasts, and now I see why, with all the knowledge you have and the game and respect that you have for the game. This is why Jess is one of the best in the game, in the business.
I appreciate being on, guys. It's always a blast. Just a lot of memories from my childhood of coming out to the race and loving Indiana basketball. And I'll leave it. I talked to Tim Gurl the other day before the game, who's the legendary trainer, best in the country at Indiana. And I came out a little bit early because of the weather. I was going to come in the day before and go to practice just to study a little more. And then Tim said that he said, you should have come in yesterday. You missed it. Coach Knight was here for the whole practice. And it made me sick, right? Because I have not talked to him for years. I had breakfast with him in 1999, the morning after Steve Alford came back with the Iowa team for the first time. And, we could talk about that for a couple hours too, but just the history, the tradition, I was so regretful that I didn't get to sit next to Coach Knight for 2 hours of practice. Otherwise I'd have some even better stories for you, but really appreciate it, guys. It was fun to be back in Indiana. I love calling games there, and hopefully I get a few more as the season goes on.
Where is it in Iowa you actually live? How far is it from Carson?
Say that again.
How far from Carson, Iowa are you?
I've never heard of Carson, Iowa.
Oh, wow.
I've been in every city in Iowa in my life except for Carson. I didn't know there was a Carson.
I think it's in the southwest. I thought it was in the southwest corner. I used to rodeo. So we had a rodeo in Carson, and I'm trying to think. Sydney had one there at the Sydney Fairgrounds. There's a big Sydney rodeo.
Wow.
The rodeo.
Were you riding bulls?
Heck no, man. I'm smarter than that. I was roping steers.
No, you're right.
Here we go. Carson, Iowa is a bedroom community located on Highway 92 and Highway 59, approximately 21 miles east of Council Bluffs.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's got to be Western Iowa on 92.
There you go, man.
All right, guys. Appreciate
Buddy,
it.
have a great day, Jess. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Jess Settles joining us here on Indiana Sports Speed Radio. Cannot thank him enough. Man, that was a blast, an absolute blast. I know, Dustin, you have to go, right?
I'm good.
He's good. All right. John, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back here on Indiana Sports Speed Radio, brought to you by our good friends from Endeavor Hospitality, Cabello Restaurant. Get the tastes and traditions of Southern Italy right in Southern Indiana, right on the square in Bloomington. Part of the Endeavor Hospitality WOW Network. Go sign up. Start earning WOW rewards today. Cabello. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
That might be one of the best one-off guests you've ever had.
Awesome. That was awesome.
I knew it was going to be. Well, we needed it. We've been pissing people off for the last 2 days.
I know.
Why? Oh, you mean with your all's conversation?
Yeah.
It's
I'm
mostly.
I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just addressing one issue. I'm just talking about the toughness of this team. Is what I'm talking about.
I would feel a little bit worse if Don hadn't echoed our same sentiments.
Well, he started
What? He started it. Well, here's the thing. This is legit. This is legitimately the thing I have is. We all came into this season thinking Indiana was going to win the Big Ten.
But that's our fault. That's not Indiana's fault.
No, I don't think it's anybody's fault. All I'm saying is they have not lived up to that expectation. And so that part of it is frustrating. So that's all I'm saying.
And the fact is they should be living up to that expectation because they raised the bar last year.
Yes.
And they were supposedly better talented this year.
Right. So I will stop ripping them so hard.
Well, I'm not trying to rip them. I'm just talking about one aspect.
Right. And it's not like they can't get it fixed.
No,
I'm not writing this team. I'm not writing this team off. There have been issues that are frustrating to watch when you're watching the game. That's where I'm coming from with that.
And what I'm saying is the team I've seen play the last 3 weeks cannot win the Big Ten.
Right.
And it's okay if they don't. It's just don't finish in the middle of the pack.
Well,
now if you don't have Xavier Johnson, that might not be possible.
But that is a big factor. Not having and having PJ.
It absolutely hurts. He's your best leader. He may be,
and that's actually, in my opinion, that if Xavier Johnson is your best leader, that's not a good thing on this team.
It's not. He may be, and he might be. I don't want to say their only leader. I know Trey Galloway's trying, but he's doesn't have the experience just yet. It should be Race Jackson Davis.
It should be.
It should be Race Thompson. It should be Miller Kopp. All three of those guys, they've got 15 years of college basketball between them.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well.
Jim doesn't think X is a leader.
He's there's
wow.
We could be a leader, but
says.
there's also good and bad
Michelle,
leaders.
wait a minute. Hold on. Michelle says expect to equal PU slander when they lose to Rutgers next week. What slander?
There we go.
Mercy.
Hey,
Boy, see, I told you we're pissing people off today.
Indiana basketball fans are the opposite of Indiana football fans. They get mad when you're pessimistic, but they can't help but be pessimistic when it's football season.
I know.
Here we go.
Is part of Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Cannot thank everybody enough for joining us today. We've had a lot of fun, actually. I think we've upset a lot of people, but unintentionally, I can assure you. But we'll find some funner things to talk about the rest of the week. But, man, that was an absolute blast having Jess Settles on, and I can't thank him enough again. What a great guy. Who knew? Farmer.
I did not know that.
How many high-end basketball analysts are on air right now and then go back to their day gig as a farmer? Hey, I got to go till the back 40, babe. I got to go plow up the ground. And I got to head up to Bloomington to do this game. I think it's awesome.
It's awesome. And it's awesome that he gets to do it with his dad too. That's he brought that up. You brought that up. That's really special. Getting to do that and then be able to broadcast games, and man, what an awesome dude. What an awesome dude.
Micah says leaders are hard to come by. From your number 5 guards leading this team, best in his opinion. Jennifer thinks that they're the same as last year. We'll see. Pete says Settles basically said similar thoughts on Indiana. Bet if you put any broadcaster on our show that they would say the same thing about this particular IU squad. Yes, I agree. Don Fisher said it. Yep. He's the home broadcaster. But pessimistic. Possible. You got to be positive. But yes, it's going to be fun. I look forward to the challenge. I look forward to the challenge of them going to Iowa, coming out and saying, all right, I'm tired of hearing about this crap of us not being tough. And let's show, boom, let's do it. Let's get down to getting at it.
You're gonna have 13 days off to work on some things, maybe. And what Jess Settles said is correct. I do think that it might be a blessing in disguise that TJD wasn't on the floor, because maybe you learn different things about your offense and a new way to play. Maybe it's something you can work on during this time. It is going to be incredibly interesting to me to see what this team does in that first game back. 13 days off is a long time, and you can't really replicate the experience of a game in practice. But this is a team that I think needed to hit the practice floor hard, needed to hit the reset button. And look, I know they're 10-3, but I wasn't overly impressed with the last couple games. Now let's see. Let's hit the reset button, fresh start. Let's see what this team can do on the road. They've got a tough stretch coming up. It's going to be incredibly interesting to see how they come out of the gates here in about a week against Iowa.
Absolutely, and it is a tough place to play. It's a place and a team that has veterans on it. Patrick McCaffrey, for one, like I said, he's in his 14th year with the Iowa program now. So he's a veteran, a veteran for certain. I almost did ask this to Jess. Iowa is the king of having guys play for. It's like they signed pro contracts.
That's true. Jordan
Bohannon.
Bohannon.
And McCaffrey combined for 14 freaking years of college eligibility.
That's insane, isn't it?
It is nuts. But I can't thank everybody enough, man. It's been an absolute blast today. And if we made you mad, well, daggone it, we'll make you happy tomorrow. But right. It's been so much fun. Cannot thank everybody enough. Big thanks, of course, to Jess Settles. Man, he was an absolute Bob. And we're still thinking about Bob Kravitz. He's been under the weather. He's feeling okay. Just it's having a voice problem. He hadn't had a voice to talk. So thinking about you, Bob. Hope you get better soon. And tomorrow, Rick Bozich is on. He was usually on today, but he had to switch because of a conflict. Kyler Staley will be on as well, and much more. Chris Denari. Let's see if Matt Taylor maybe. And we'll see what else we can scrounge up. But appreciate everybody so much. Dustin Schutte from theoutsider.com. Of course, John for keeping us between the white lines. And most importantly, each and every one of you for being there. Without you, we've got no reason to be here. Go out and have yourselves a great day. When you come back, we're on the back side of the week. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.